live stream on the board's YouTube channel. A recording of this meeting will remain available there following the meeting. As has been the practice of recent meetings, board members who have joined online, please use the raise hand function in Teams if you wish to be recognized. Please also limit your use of the chat to technology or other non-substantive issues that members of the public, so that members of the public can more fully experience this meeting. As we begin, I'd like to also recognize the service of Don Grundhauser, who submitted his resignation from the board in May. Mr. Grundhauser was appointed by the board to the board by Mayor Chris Coleman in 2011 and served here for nearly 12 years. Don was an active neighbor in the Capitol Heights area and provided a strong voice and connection between the board and the area residents. A sincere thank you to Mr. Grundhauser for his long-standing service and real commitment to the board, the neighborhood, and the community. So we can do a little bit of this online. Thank you, Don, and I appreciate your service so much. So I understand that Mayor Carter is recommending the appointment of Hannah Hills for the board's community representative seat, and that her appointment is pending city council confirmation, and their action is expected in the coming weeks. Ms. Hills, we look forward to more formally welcoming you at our next meeting. I also regret to note the passing in late May of Nancy Stark, who served as the executive secretary beginning in the 1990s through her retirement in 2014. I understand that she was deeply respected in the architectural community and brought a strong background in business management to the board. And in the words of her successor, Paul Mandel, who is here, quote, "She had a heart of gold." Some former colleagues of Nancy wish to recognize and organize a small gathering of current and former board members and staff to honor Nancy and her good work later this fall. So now to formally begin the meeting, with some attendees who have joined virtually, we will continue to conduct votes by roll call and also determine if a quorum is present. Tomorrow marks the beginning of the great Minnesota get-together, or what I like to call the most wonderful time of the year. And so usually reserved for the Christmas holiday, but I think it's appropriate for the state fair. So with that, just a quick opening as we take roll call. Would love for you to share your favorite food or attraction at the Minnesota State Fair. I can go first. It's hard for me to name just one thing about the fair because it's my favorite thing. But I would say going down the giant slide with my kiddo is probably my favorite part of the Minnesota State Fair. So with that, in alphabetical order for roll call, Ms. Badgerow.
Present, and my favorite part of the state fair is the free music. It's everywhere, and there's some wonderful acts there from Minnesota and elsewhere.
Absolutely. Dr. Kate Bean. Okay. Ms. Felton.
Good morning and present. And my favorite state fair food is the smoked turkey legs and the donuts.
Excellent choice. Representative Freiberg.
Thank you. Present. I was thinking about staying the giant slide, but a couple of years ago, but that's been taken. So a couple of years ago, I discovered the mini donut flavored beer, which is pretty good. I'd recommend it.
Also an excellent choice, Representative Freiberg. There's a little, cinnamon sugar rim on that beer. Mr. Garrett.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm present, and I'd also agree with Alicia that those ginormous Fred Flintstone-sized turkey, smoked turkey legs, and the mini donuts are my favorite, but also the super sugary lemon that we're not supposed to have.
There's a lot of things at the state fair that we're not supposed to have, right? Thank you so much. Representative Hertas.
Present. And I think some of my favorite areas of the fair are ag areas and Machinery Hill. I like to always look at the equipment. As for foods, judging by the extra weight that I carry, just about anything is acceptable. Probably my favorite is the Euros. And then up on the north end, there's always this stand that has this humongous deep fat fried pork tenderloin that is about the size of a Frisbee. And I always like that.
Excellent choices. You all know how to do the fair. I'm very excited. Mr. McLean.
Hey, apologies. I intended to be there in person, and actually I still do. My last meeting ran long, so I will be there shortly in person. What I love about the fair is the new food every year, so I can't pick a favorite. I just like going there and seeing what's the new latest attraction. But for some reason, what came to mind first was the Spam Burger, which I tried at the state fair one time because I don't know, it didn't sound that appealing, but it was actually quite good, and it was new, so I had to try it, and it was good. So I'm gonna go with the Spam Burger.
Also, excellent choice. I was skeptical, but you're right, it was good. Senator Nelson.
Morning, present. Well, my favorite place at the state fair is the education building. Always great things to learn there and great people to see. And then you can't think about the state fair without great food. And that is a hard choice. There's a couple things that I have to have every year. That is a corn dog. They're great corn on the cob and Sweet Martha's cookies. And then there's other things to fill into. But it's a wonderful time. I'll be up there on Sunday, on September 2nd, the last Sunday of the fair.
Perfect. Senator, I hope to see you. There. The education building is great. And yes to all those choices. Senator Pappas.
Well, Senator Nelson stole part of my answer. I was obviously going to say my favorite place is the Senate booth in the education building, where I spend several hours every year at the fair.
Perfect. And we look forward to seeing you there as well. And finally, Mr. Yang.
Oh, I forgot to say I'm present.
Oh, you're present. Yes.
Present. Good morning, folks. I love, for the past few years, they have done Hmong Minnesota Day, which will be on September 5th on Labor Day, I believe, this year. But lots of friends and performers and culture.
Absolutely. Always some pretty solid dance performances during that, too. Welcome. Well, thank you. A quorum is present. I'm grateful to have all of you here and very excited for the start of the fair. As you all were walking in, I'm sure you saw there's lots of work that is happening on the Capitol right now, but it's also exciting when you're in this space, a good reminder of what we are tasked to do in our role. So we now will turn to our next agenda item, updates and further discussion on the proposed updates to the Minnesota rules on commemorative works. Since our last meeting this spring, Administrative Law Judge O'Reilly and Chief Judge Starr completed their report reviewing our proposed rules. I'm glad to see that their report generally finds that our proposed rules are needed and reasonable. In the time since the report was received, board staff have been working to consider the suggestions from Judge O'Reilly and address a few of the disapproved items. This executive secretary compiled a very detailed tracking of recommended updates to the proposed rules, which she sent to the board members earlier this month and are also posted online. I'm glad to see that the suggested updates are focused on clarifying intent, process, and roles and do not deviate from the substance or policy. I would also compliment the clear presentation and attention to detail in this document. It is clearly the product of a significant effort, and for that we are grateful. Thank you for getting in the weeds, Executive Secretary. So the Executive Secretary will now provide an update on where we stand in the rulemaking process, along with an overview of the recommended updates to the proposed rule.
Thank you. All right, you see the slide up today, and this is a reminder of the recent rulemaking steps we've been through. So the last time the board met to discuss the rules was in April in advance of we met for the public hearing and then right after the public hearing. And the board looked at a set of recommended updates to the proposed commemorative works rules based on input we received from public comments and at the public hearing. At that time, the board voted to submit the rules with those amendments to the administrative law judge. And the administrative law judge then reviews everything and prepares a report. That report was issued at the end of May and spent the months of June and July reviewing that report in detail and preparing a response. So what you have been sent is a lengthy 31-page letter that responds to the administrative law judge and the chief ALJ report. And I'll say that the overall theme of the comments from the administrative law judge was focused on clarity of process, intent, and roles. So a lot of the recommendations were related to specific rule language. But there were a few points that were more specific. So go ahead. So you've been getting a lot of different documents. I know they might be confusing. Within the Minnesota rulemaking process, I think there might be something like 25 different template documents that have to be filed at one point or another during the rulemaking process. So as you see certain documents, they are almost always following a template of something that's required for the step. So the most important things you've seen recently were the rulemaking memo that was submitted to the administrative law judge in response to the report, or the memo from me to the board for this meeting, the chief administrative law judge report, the letter where we responded and suggested modifications to the rules based on the report and its recommendations. In order to submit that to the administrative law judge, the reviser needed to make a new copy of the rules, and their copy shows every proposed modification since the public hearing version. And then what you have gotten in your packet and we'll talk about is a draft order adopting the rules and a recommended board resolution. So as I said, the administrative law judge and chief administrative law judge took about a month to go through our document details, and their report was extremely extensive. I think I've been in the 300s for footnotes on different parts. So they put in really tremendous effort to review it in great detail. And then they send the letter saying, here's what we think of your rules. That's the long document, and it goes through in precision. I don't know that all of you read that line for line, but there was a lot in there, and we really appreciate the work of the law judges. Next. So within the report, as I said, most of the changes were language clarifications to ensure that intent, roles, and process would be clear to all readers in implementation of the rules. But there were 4 items that they identified as disapproved. And what this means is that as the administrative law judges that need to give a thumbs up to rules proceeding, they would not approve them unless these items were corrected in some manner. So the 4 disapproved items, I'll go through each with a slide. The first was around a design review group and selection. And this relates to convening a group that looks at proposals for the addition of new works. And what the administrative law judge wanted to be clearer in the rules is that the design review group does not have the authority to select a final design. They have the authority to review and make a recommendation to the board, but it's the board itself that votes on the design. So we made that modification. Next. The second disapproved item related to the schematic design and design development, and that in the rules as we had written them, you know, we assumed that the board had signed off on approving the design. And so originally the rules said that the executive secretary, then acting on behalf of the board, would be tasked with reviewing construction and bid documents. We did, she asked, and we clarified that first, the Department of Administration has very important roles in soliciting construction and bid documents and reviewing them, and that our role is really in ensuring that the construction documents are consistent with the selected design and process that we hosted early on. So that as executive secretary, I review that, but that's only under the previous approval of the board. All right, she made a really good observation for the process for reviewing modification or removal proposals. And that was that in the additions process, we had some really clear steps for how the review of the design and modification the ideas for the new design would walk through different steps and who would review them and how. And the administrative law judge asked that there be more information in the rules about there being some requirement for like a disposition plan or a modification plan in the instances where that is going to be proceeding, and that plan would be one of the items reviewed by the board. Next, so we address that. And then finally, there was concern that we weren't completely clear in subpart 8 that all of the criteria for modification had to be evaluated in making a decision about a modification request. And so we tightened up the language to say, apply all of the following criteria. So with that, we feel that our proposed modifications have clearly met what was asked for on the disapproved items. The next step in the process, the administrative law judge and chief administrative law judge have been sent the letter that was included in your packets with the suggested modifications to address disapproved items. And we also had suggested modifications just to address some of the other comments that the judges had. The next step would be their office reviews the suggested modifications, assuming that they feel that those are appropriate to move forward and approve those. The next step would be in order to adopt rules. And this is the step that officially begins the kind of more technical elements of rulemaking. So it means that there's an order to adopt the rules, and then it goes through the step of Secretary of State review, Governor's Office review, reviser makes another clean copy, and whatnot. So what I am going to be asking of this board, if we go to the next slide for a moment, is that you would approve a resolution directing and authorizing me to proceed with the notice of intent to adopt rules pending the okay from the administrative law judge and the chief administrative law judge. And this is the language of the resolution. But with that, I think love to hear any questions, discussion at this important step in the process.
Yes, so members can go ahead and discuss this. Before we dive into the passage of this resolution, Ms. Badrow, your hand is raised. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that as a member of the original decision task force, I think we had no idea what we were kicking off when we recommended these rules. But in any event, what we specified was that we wanted a well-defined process to fill a clear gap in existing rules as to how we handle commemorative works. And bingo, I think we've certainly done that. It is breathtakingly thorough and detailed. And I think that staff is certainly entitled to some sort of endurance award for having made through all of this incredibly detailed material. But suffice it to say, they have. And even with the help of the reviser, with even added additional clarity, I think we're there. And so I want to applaud the work of staff in particular. And I want to say how gratified I am as a member of that original task force that our work has come to fruition. And we will now have a very clear process by which we can add and remove commemorative works. So that's my editorial statement.
Thank you for your editorial statement. Thank you for your good work. Your perspective as a task force member is very much appreciated here. Any other questions, comments, reflections? Representative Bertas.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And if you could just clarify what I thought you had explained, that before this goes to the ALG for the final approval, that the executive branch looks at it one more time, or has not reviewed it yet?
After the order of adopt is issued, order of intent to adopt is issued, it's reviewed by the Secretary of State's office, the revisor's office, and then a final review happens with the governor. And my understanding is the governor could choose to veto, in which case I believe it would move to more of a legislative review step.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Bertas, I do not anticipate that would be the case, but that is certainly part of the process.
There's a reason for special session.
I have lots of reasons for a special session. Okay, before I get myself in trouble, any other questions or comments, reflections? I just wanted to note that this is our sixth board meeting to consider these rules. It has been thorough, as Ms. Badger noted, as you noted, Executive Secretary. And this process has actually moved remarkably fast for a rulemaking process. So I also want to note that as well. Executive Secretary, is there anything else that you want to? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Nelson, go right ahead. You're very tiny on the screen, so I apologize for not seeing you. Go right ahead, Senator Nelson, and I believe you are muted. Let's see if I can unmute you, Senator. You are still muted, Senator. I can't unmute you, unfortunately.
How's this?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Go right ahead.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I have just a couple questions, and let's see, I might have lost the document where I wrote it down, but I'll just briefly. So, one, I appreciate the work, and especially we know that rulemaking is cumbersome, as it should be, because of the magnitude of the effect of rulemaking. So certainly understand that. But my question has to do with the reason that really I believe this was undertaken, and I agree with the former comments that there needed to be a process in place. And I think, Madam Chair, you mentioned that in one of your first meetings as we talked about the the legal tearing down of that Christopher Columbus statue. If I remember correctly, that's what brought to your mind the fact that we just didn't have, I thought I remembered your comments that we just didn't have a process for reviewing commemorative art work at the Capitol. And so we have undergone this long process, a very public process regarding rulemaking. And my question has to do with a couple terms. I can't see if I can pull them up here. Yes. On the final proposed rules to the ALJ, I just have a couple comments. One is an overarching comment I don't, it seems to me when it comes to removal of commemorative artwork or commemorative work on our Capitol grounds, which has been here for, in some cases, hundreds of years, long standing the test of time, I'm concerned if removal of that artwork comes down to the governor and his appointed board. I'm glad to be on this board, but I would just say I think that's a problem of taking a very historic piece and if I understand correctly, the adoption today, and I'll ask for clarification, but I will not be supporting this adoption of rules if in fact it turns over our historic commemorative artwork and the disposition or basically termination of that work to one governor and one administration. I think it is a much broader issue than that. And those type of decisions must be made by the legislature, the duly elected representatives of the people throughout the entire state. So that would be my question having to do with termination. And Madam Chair, if you can describe that process a bit. I know that was the genesis of the undertaking of this in the first place. And I think we all agree that the illegal removal of that Christopher Columbus statue being torn down was wrong. And to your credit, Madam Chair, you've set on a path to get a process for a termination or a removal of any type of commemorative artwork. But perhaps, Madam Chair, you or your staff could better describe how that would work under the rules that we have before us for adoption today.
Certainly. Thank you to Senator Nelson for your question. Just for a point of clarification, the governor's office does not appoint the majority of the people who sit on the board. The mayor of St. Paul also has appointments. So I think the folks who established the CAAPB board in the first place, right? There are also legislative appointments to your point. Thought about this very issue that this is a place and space that we all have collective responsibility for, as well as collective accountability for as well. I'm going to ask Executive Secretary Mayor Clapp-Smith to just explain the process to answer that question, but did just want to point out that there are multiple folks who sit at this table. And I think through our task force process as well, we tried to put together a task force that was reflective of Minnesota from folks on both sides of the aisle, diverse in geography, race as well. And that was important to us to get here. But go ahead, Executive Secretary, if you can speak through the process.
Yes, thank you. And Senator Nelson, thank you for your comments. You brought up what I think is a really important point, which is that we should not leave commemorative work decisions for the Capitol grounds to political agendas, whether they be the governor's office or the legislature, because we know that, who's in power changes. And what we want in commemorative works decision is continuity that better reflects how the state and its people as a whole are feeling at any point in time and over time. So we have constructed in the rules, and thank you to the task forces for their drafting, a very robust process for public engagement. And there is language within the rules that sets a bar for hearing from the public in a manner that you're hearing from broad-based members of the public as opposed to just say a specific constituency. And we use some of that specific language because if there was a feeling that there was a process moving forward and a decision being made by a vocal minority of people, that language would enable a legal challenge to that. And so these rules are written to ensure that we can advance commemorative works decisions with a small group of people and not have that kind of broad-based support.
Senator Nelson, do you have any additional questions or things you would like to add? And then Representative Hurtas, you are on deck. Senator, I believe you are muted.
Again.
Oh, no, we're good. I can hear you. Sorry. Go right ahead.
My question is, I do not believe that. So if I understand correctly, would allow the small cap to how and when commemorative.
Senator, we're having a very hard time hearing you. You're sort of going in and out. I don't know if you want to lean closer to your microphone, if that might help. No, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? All right. What I want rules of forest.
Senator, I'm so very sorry. We are having a difficult time hearing you. If we can have someone send her the phone number so that we can hear. Perfect. Peter is going to send you the phone number to call in so that we can hear you.
Okay. While we're waiting for Senator Nelson to be able to get things set up so that we can hear her clearly, I want to make one other point about decisions about commemorative works and decisions of the past, and that if the decision has been made to do a commemorative work, should that work remain in perpetuity? And I think it's hard in our lifetimes to remember that this is a place that will be here for centuries and centuries and centuries. And a lot of history will have happened, and a lot of history will be to come. And what we see in places that are around for a long time is what we commemorate in public spaces does slowly change over time, just as our history moves forward as well. And what we're constantly doing is sort of taking a look at a point in time and figuring out what are the most important things to commemorate right now, which are maybe less important than they used to be, and which new things do we want to add. And so there's a very slow evolution of commemoration that happens. And so in the big picture, I think it's healthy to assume that some types of change and evolution will occur on the state campus.
Thank you, Executive Secretary. I believe you are now connected by phone, Senator Nelson. Are you on by phone, Senator Nelson?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I feel like there's an echo, so.
Yes, there's an echo. Turn off something else.
Now she will want to mute her.
Yeah, so your computer is muted, and if you can turn down your volume all the way on your computer, that should make a difference. And now we can't hear you. Hold on.
Where's your phone?
I think your phone disconnected, Senator.
I think Representative Hurtas made it.
And Representative Hurtas, I'm going to come to you while we are waiting for Senator Nelson to reconnect.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members. My question is a little bit of a segue to the question that Senator Nelson was asking about the disposition of art. And when I was reviewing the document earlier, it mentions disposition, but my question to all of us is whether or not there should be some more detailed process as to what consideration should be part of that disposition. For example, some of the artwork that's currently just been added, there was, and our rules are going to say that the applicant has a greatest responsibility of providing the funding and for the installation of that artwork. It's my understanding that there was quite a historical effort in terms of Italian Americans here in St. Paul to erect the Christopher Columbus statue. And so acknowledging that, yes, maybe public sentiment does change over time and that there may be overwhelming support to change some of the commemorative art on the Capitol grounds. My question would be, what is a fair disposition of that artwork in terms of other people's past efforts to fundraise, and who should be compensated, or who should that artwork then be returned to? Mm-hmm. I have had requests in my office with regards to Christopher Columbus wanting to know whether or not that artwork can be transferred to a non-public space and can still be something that is available for people who disagree with those decisions to still honor history. I think I'm troubled with the idea, particularly what I've been witnessing in this last several years around the country. And this is not an endorsement of past historical incidents or anything like that, but I think eliminating art, and it's often been said that art is subjective, it has different meanings to different people. I wouldn't want the Holocaust curriculum in St. Louis Park High School, where I went, to be eliminated because some people complain that that never happened. So to the extent that we had a civil war in this country over issues, and some of these historical figures are commemorated, good, bad, or indifferent, nonetheless, it's part of our history. And to simply absolve ourselves from the past, I think is dangerous for future generations to not be aware of even the wrongs that may have happened, that it's a reminder. So I don't want to get into the depths of the philosophical argument about retaining contested public pieces of art. But I am concerned about if there is a disposition plan, should there be, as part of this approval, kind of a little bit more of a framework as to who should have an interest in this removed art and whether or not they should be compensated for it being removed for their past efforts, or whether or not that entity, if it still exists, or predecessors and or those who would follow in that organization steps should have some significant input as to where that artwork should be moved to.
I appreciate that reflection, Representative Bertas, and I don't know, Executive Secretary, if there's anything that you'd like to, to speak to that. I do know that there are no decisions that have been made about any commemorative works as of this time. That is why we entered into this process, just for our listening audience, for our watching audience, that no decisions have been made there.
Yeah, thank you. The disposition decisions are going to be really important, and some of the suggested language that was added most recently following the ALJ report is that we beefed up a criteria for removal, which now reads, in addition to the availability of necessary funding, the availability of exhibition and storage space for relocating the artwork, if the artwork is removed, and the disposition of the artwork. So this means that evaluation of removal has to take into account what the disposition plan is, whether it's realistic. So we absolutely don't want some group in the future to decide that it's time for a certain work to go. But nobody knows where it's going to go, and it has no home. So that decision about that next step is very important. And I think our forebears in these roles have done a good job of making sure that the works on the Capitol are really beautiful works of art. And so it should be our goal that they don't get destroyed or something, that they are able to be rehomed in some manner. And there are a lot of people that care. So I know that looking ahead, as we get applications, some of these conversations could be very contentious. I'm really hoping that with the leadership of this board, we figure out how to construct conversations between groups and the public, where we really try to learn through the process of evaluating and not just be fighting back and forth. And criteria that are also included are, what was the original intent? What was the vision? What is the story behind how it came to be? And I think that came from the task forces. And I think they felt it was important for people that are applying to remove or modify, understand where that came from. Mm-hmm. Who cares about it? Who are the artists? And just as an anecdote, I have a friend who said to me 2 months ago, I'm in this group chat and there's this woman on there who's really upset about the Columbus statue. And it turns out she's the great granddaughter of the artist. And she wants to make sure that there's not some rash decision and that beautiful artwork just disappears. And that's absolutely important and critical to be thinking about.
Absolutely. Representative Hurtas, and then I'm going to come to Senator Nelson, and then Senator Pappas, I will come to you.
Thank you. Well, my follow-up is, I guess I would want to make sure as part of this process that in the event that artwork is removed from the public domain, public buildings, mm-hmm. That if the state or our public interest is absolving itself of custodianship mm-hmm. of that art, then that's final. And if it gets transferred back to the daughter of the artist who sculpted, if that becomes their property, that they have final say. But obviously this removal comes with more than just removal. It comes with the burden of transport, mm-hmm. Relocation, re-erection. There's additional costs. So I think the folks behind the movement to remove should be responsible for those relocation costs, and that once that's done, then the state has no more say about it, and it is protected by the new custodian and their stewardship.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
So that's what I'm hoping there's some assurance under that disposition process.
And the fundraising to enable addition, modification, or removal, and all those costs is at the burden of the applicant to do that fundraising. They might raise public funds, private funds, philanthropic, but the demonstration of availability of funding to go through all those steps is a criteria for making a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hurtas, I don't know if I remember that you also went to St. Louis Park High School. Noted. So Senator Nelson, we will come back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. We're not sure what all happened there, but wonderful. All right. So what I wanted to address has been talked about a little bit here. And my at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I will be making an amendment to specifically, I believe that the CAAPB board has a very important role, and you have done a good job of undertaking starting this process. But I do believe that the CAAPB board should make a recommendation, much like some of our other boards do, to the legislature. And the legislature, the duly elected legislature, the representatives of the people at the time should be where this decision is ultimately made. Particularly, now I can see where changing specific artwork inside the Capitol could be a small item, or could be a large item, for example, or it could be one of the statues on our Capitol grounds, like the Christopher Columbus statue. And so while I greatly appreciate the awesome work that has been done here and your initiative to get this started, Madam Chair, I believe the role of the CAP board would be to make a recommendation to the legislature for final vote on termination, I believe is what it's called in the documents that were sent to me, or removal of a commemorative artwork. And that will be my motion at the appropriate time.
Noted. Senator Pappas.
Thank you. I just had a couple comments. Representative Hurtis mentioned compensation to the people who originally perhaps fundraised for the commemorative artwork. Now, I've been on the CAP board for a couple decades. I'm not sure, and Paul may remember when this happened, but I don't believe originally people were paying for commemorative artworks. I don't know if the legislature appropriated the money or admin paid for it, but at a certain point in our history, we did start requiring that the sponsoring group raise the money for the commemorative artwork. Sometimes the legislature pitched in with some money, but also created a maintenance fund. And so we would have to go back and look at the history to see I don't know how long the Columbus statue has been there or some of the other artwork to see if there ever was created any kind of a maintenance fund or anything like that that would need to be compensated in some way, perhaps. My second comment is in response to what Senator Nelson said. I think my preference is that we go ahead with the current rules, keeping in mind that the legislature can always override them. The legislature could always pass a law saying, no, we don't want you to do what you're planning to do. And I think that's probably a better approach, given how difficult it has been lately to pass legislation. If we have more of something we develop, legislators are represented on this board, have plenty of opportunity to provide input. And if it becomes enough of a controversial decision by the CAP board, then, like I said, the legislature could overturn that. Talking to Carla, actually.
Yes, thank you. Executive Secretary, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the first point that Senator Pappas made?
Yes, thanks. Just very briefly, I want to underscore that in my reading of Minnesota statute and the creation and composition of the CAP board, it seems to me that it was very intentional that it be decoupled from pure politics, and that the board is a mix of someone from the governor's office, 4 legislators that are selected by legislative leadership, 3 appointees from the mayor, and 3 appointees from the governor. And I am guessing that this occurred because decisions about a statewide campus that is here for hundreds of years was seen as something that should be larger than political sensibilities in the moment. And so I think that within the spirit of that, it shouldn't be the legislature or the governor's office that are making final decisions. I think it should be a group that balances all those interests, and more importantly, balances the interests of the general public of the state of Minnesota.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Bean, who has her hand raised. Welcome to the meeting, Dr. Bean. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. My apologies for being late and for not having my camera on. I'm traveling in a car with small children. But I just want to mention that I appreciate the previous comments that were just made. I think that it's important to think about the fact that, and speaking as a Dakota woman who was not represented in any way by anyone when this statue was erected, I think it's important to speak up. And I just want to, a reminder, I know that this conversation is really about process and not necessarily about the history of the Columbus statue itself right now. But at the same time, when we're having conversations and using terms like removal, we have to remember that that statue represented the removal and death of thousands of Indigenous people. And that has a human impact. And to constantly hear terms like removal and in terms of a statue, we need to remember that there were human lives that were removed and there were human impacts here, and that there is a lot of trauma associated with this language and with a lot of trauma associated with this piece that impacts people today. And I just want to put that out there because it's important. And it's something that I feel in my heart when we have these conversations, and it's a reminder of how important it is for us to be here today. Thank you.
Dr. Bean, thank you for your comments. Senator Nelson, your hand is still raised. I wanted to check and see if you had anything else to add. Otherwise, I will move us to the resolution.
No, I do, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. To the point of, this is a point of process for me. This is a point of process in, I just want to comment to our secretaries or executive directors comment as far as not making this political. What I would say is it is very political right now if this board would be the board that would determine what types of artwork leave our Capitol grounds. As noted, the mayor of St. Paul appoints 3 members to this board, as does the governor. There's 6 members right there that are not representative of the will. It is not a equitable body in that regard. And when we are talking about looking at removal of things on our Capitol grounds that have been here through the test of time, and maybe we have different views today. And, you know, I've talked about how we should do a reinterpretation plaque. This is what we knew then. This is what we knew now, and what we know now, just like we did in the in our Capitol, in the rotunda, regarding a memorial artwork that had been inadequately described at the point that it was placed, and then of course the CAP board placed a new commemorative work under that explaining what we know today. You know, that would have been the preference, for example, perhaps with the Christopher Columbus statue. But the point of the matter is the CAP board can talk about those type of things, reinterpretation, adding plaques to existing commemorative works, but it is not the place of the CAP board, which has which is not an accurate representation of the people of the state of Minnesota, to make that decision. And so that's why my motion, I'll make that motion now, Madam Chair, is that the CAP board will make recommendations for termination or removal to the legislature, and the legislature will have the jurisdictional duty to approve or not approve those terminations. And that follows, of course, our duty as duly elected representatives. So that is my motion, Madam Chair.
Members, there is a motion in front of us. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
The motion has been made and seconded. We will go ahead in alphabetical order to this motion. We can start the roll call. Pardon me, discussion of the motion. Go right ahead, members. I am very conscious of how much time we are spending on this. And so if you can be short and sweet and to the point, I would appreciate it. So any discussion? Mr. McLean, go right ahead.
I just have a quick, more of a process question. If we make an amendment, what is the process with the administrative law judge? Does this go back, or are they kind of done with their work?
Executive Secretary.
Yeah, we at any point as the entity submitting rules for consideration, we can put that submission on hold or just pull it back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Any other additional questions? Comments, snide remarks? No. Okay, so there is a motion before us. I will go ahead and take the roll call. Members, just wanted to note that I will be voting no to this motion. I believe that our role is clear in statute, and if a legal change should be made, the legislature has it under their purview to do so. So with that, Ms. Badgerow.
Negative.
Dr. Bean.
No.
Ms. Felton has left the meeting. Representative Freiberg.
No.
Mr. Garrett Jr.
Nay.
Representative Furtas.
Yes.
Mr. McLean.
No.
Senator Nelson.
Yes.
Senator Pappas.
No.
Mr. Yang.
No.
No, there being 7 noes, nays, and 2 yeses, the motion does not pass. Thank you. This is an important discussion, and I'm glad that we are having it. Senator Nelson, to your point, there's an opportunity for us to continue this discussion as well as the legislative session begins, if that is so what the legislature desires to make that change.
Madam Chair?
Senator Nelson.
Thank you. Just one final comment. And I think that this vote shows that this board, which is largely made up of appointees from the mayor and the governor, is not the board that should be deciding which things are removed from our capital complex. That I firmly believe that does belong in front of the legislature. So I just wanted to make the point that I think the vote actually showed why the amendment would have been a better representation of the people. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. I know that we all take this work incredibly seriously and want to do what is best by Minnesotans. That is why we are all in these roles and serve in these positions. I appreciate the work of all of the board members who sit on this board and do this good work, and we will continue to do it together. Representative Furtas, and then I am going to very quickly move us along.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I just wanted to comment that the discussion about this issue and the vote, particularly some of the discussions, goes to my point about the subjectivity of art. Some people believe that the statue that was torn down is representative of displacement and the ruin of indigenous culture. Others viewed it as a linking of the geographical hemispheres and people moving to the new world. So you can have this dichotomy about what it represents. Everybody's entitled to their view. The consequences of things that happened. And so I think that's an important element of history and not just to whitewash the past.
I would agree with you, Representative Furtas. It's an important note of history. I would also acknowledge that folks such as Dr. Bean and myself were not even permitted in this building for quite some time. So as we're having this conversation, I think it's important to note that there are new voices who are at the table who've long been part of Minnesota, who should be part of this discussion. And that is the beauty of this board, is that we can have these difficult discussions. And in the legislature, we can also have these discussions. I've been on the floor with you, and we've had, I will say, interesting discussions, right, in the Minnesota.
You muted yourself.
Can folks not hear me on the Zoom?
I can now. I couldn't for a minute there.
Okay, you can hear me now? Okay, wonderful. Ms. Badgerow, please go right ahead.
Yes, I would just like to move this along. I would like to move the recommended resolution that was included in our board packet.
Thank you so much. So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Senator. There is a resolution before us. It is on the screen in front of you, members. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Ms. Badgerow, your hand is still raised. I just wanted to check if you wanted to weigh in on discussion.
No, Madam Chair.
Now it is down. Thank you. Thank you very much. So with that, members, I will go ahead and take the roll here. Ms. Badgerow.
Aye.
Dr. Bean.
Aye.
Representative Freiberg.
Aye.
Mr. Garrett.
Aye.
Representative Hertas.
Aye.
Mr. McLean.
Aye.
Senator Nelson.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Mr. Yang.
Aye.
And I vote in the affirmative. 9 ayes and 1 nays. The resolution passes. Thank you very much for that robust conversation. I would like to again thank the Executive Secretary, Principal Planner Musty, and Ms. Dotson for the extraordinary amount of work that has gone into the rulemaking process. We took the first step of the board to initiate the adoption of these rules just under a year ago, and it is quite the accomplishment to be this far along in the process. I know it doesn't feel that way, but truly, this is moving at the speed of government, everyone. Okay, so next on the agenda is our new behavioral health hospital project proposed in the capital area on the site known as Bethesda Hospital. Today, we will hear from the staff and the applicant and then consider approving the issuance of a zoning permit and setback variance. The zoning application form Fairview and Acadia has provided is included in your packet as well as posted online. We've heard about this proposal at the last several board meetings. So Principal Planner Musty and Advisor Bjornberg, can you please go ahead with your updates?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate some sit back and relax. We will go through a lot of information and in a short amount of time, and then we'll go back to discussion, and appreciate the team that's here from Fairview Acadia and 2 speakers. Item 3 on the agenda is consideration of the formal application by Fairview Health Services based in Minneapolis and their partner Acadia Healthcare of Franklin, Tennessee. The application proposes to build a new behavioral health hospital in place of the old Bethesda Hospital and its additions. There is a combined draft resolution forwarded to you by the staff that you'll see at the end of this presentation. If approved, recommends immediate issuance of a zoning permit for demolition, new construction, and approval of a requested variance to side building setbacks on Park Street and Como Avenue. Staff and advisors recommend approval, support approval. We are fortunate to welcome representatives of the Fairview Acadia project leadership, design, and development team to speak to the board about their proposal in a few minutes and to field any questions. We also will welcome 2 community members who will share their thoughts. The project proposal is summarized in the memo and attachments that you received via email, were published on the CAP board homepage. The full submittal has been posted on the CAP board website since acceptance in June, along with memos, historical records, CAP board advisor findings, media coverage, and a summary of the community engagement process. An online FAQ evolved based on the more common community and stakeholder questions, and those also structured much of the memo that you received. The memo included many of the submittal drawings and provided a link to the full submittal posted online at the CAP board Share Your Views page. The proposed project includes full demolition of the original hospital structure and its several additions. No change is proposed to the existing private park space bounded by Como and Cedar, you see in the northeast of the site. The applicants have committed to continuing the tradition of passive public access to the park space and will continue to make available the gazebo for neighborhood gatherings. The existing parking ramp, the old bank lot to the south, which is part of the property, and the surface parking lot will remain unchanged in this project. However, the connecting elevated glass walkway between the hospital and the parking lot will be removed. Charles Hill, the project architect, will go through the highlights of the site and building design in a few minutes. As CAP Board's zoning administrator, I can confirm to the board that the applicants provided the complete and accurate information needed to make a complete review. Has completed a range of CAP Board advisor reviews, has satisfied the level of stakeholder and neighborhood input required by the rules, our zoning rules, and by our comp plan, and which requires us to consider the impacts of changes to those greatly affected. And I'm going to take 1 minute to summarize that process. The applicant met and exceeded what was required of them in terms of activities, which included 4 meetings with a 15-member advisors design review group made of neighborhood residents and representatives from nearly all surrounding properties, including 3 appointed from the Capitol Heights Block Club, members of the Capitol Heights City Home Owners Association, Christ on Capitol Hill Lutheran, property managers of several office buildings, Charles Street institutions, and a representative of the Department of Administration. 4 other direct meetings with nearby neighborhood homeowners and block club organizations, direct meetings, including Frogtown neighborhood. 3 venues, an online live stream design presentation, and a gallery, a subsequent in-person gallery of drawings was offered at a 4-hour open house. Workshops with both our partners Move Minnesota and Capital Region Watershed District, a building tour with CAP Board members, and pre-application reviews with the City of St. Paul. Throughout, the applicant has responded promptly with thorough information, satisfy requests generated from stakeholder staff, advisors, and board members. The questions addressed in the FAQ and within 8 applicant memos included, board members have these topics. I'll go through a few of them. Historic status, demolition, whether housing options or other land use alternatives were considered, feasibility of adaptive reuse of all or parts of the building, commemorative art on the site, disposition of art within the building, building design, salvage of materials, energy performance, stormwater practices, mobility, and the pedestrian-friendly design of street frontages were all focuses of these workshops and design development. Fairview Acadia, I can attest the Fairview Acadia team formally addressed many of the questions and were able to improve some aspects of the design during the process. Through the process, team members demonstrated to me that they do have an understanding of this level of change and what that represents in the community. I'd ask you to ask the applicant team about that process if you would like. Ultimately, after formal review, all parts of the rules for zoning and design, I can confirm that with the exception of the variance pending your approval today, that the proposed design is in full compliance with our regulations. The summary of the variance, quickly, the proposed design avoided the need for many build form and size variances by keeping the building a bit larger than the minimums and a bit smaller than the limits available. For instance, it's about 5 stories downhill, 3 stories uphill. We allow around 8 to 10 in that regard. Regulations pertaining to parking, floor area ratio, and pervious surfaces were all within the parameters of our zoning. The variance requested is to allow simply the building to be set back similar to the current building from Park Street and Como Avenue at a distance similar, further than the rules would allow. This enables the building to continue to allow the green of the campus from the park to carry around the building from the existing park space to the west along Como and then to Park. So staff found that the increased setback on Park is reasonable also in that it creates room for an attractive higher capacity stormwater facility. And the bonus of an increased setback is that it then allows for future growth of the building towards the corner, which is shown best on the site plan. And I can state that staff conducted required public notice offering a minimum of 30 days to submit written comment. All properties within 350 feet were mailed the notice on June 29th. And the notice was published online and made available at community events. No comment was received during or after the 30-day requirement. No person has registered to comment on the variance in advance of the hearing. Information you received explains the staff finding that the variance criteria has been met, and the staff recommends approval. And again, I believe Charles Hill will also be displaying information on the variance in a few minutes. With my principal planner hat on, I will move fast through this, although it's very important. I can confirm today that the proposal presents a healthy alignment with the 2040 comprehensive plan. The slide here is a list of unique elements of the project that Merritt mentioned. The list was furnished in your materials. Specifically, our comp plan requires us to view all big changes in the capital area through the holistic lens, and the project does well by this measure. First, staff recognize that the project proposes a major regional investment in public health, eventually able to serve nearly 200 patients on an inpatient basis. In environmental quality, the project team has pushed beyond CAAPB board and partner requirements on building energy performance, commuting and mobility practices, and stormwater management. St. Paul community and families will directly benefit from a range of jobs restored in the neighborhood, and Rice Street and University small business community will benefit from the daily economic vitality that will return. And the art and design and the renewed character for the site continues the historic land use while strengthening the northern reach of the state's original campus plan, even establishing a prominent spot for major public artwork on the grand axis directly behind the Capitol Dome. So the rules of zoning and design and comp plan provide the regulations, policy, and design standards that must be met in order for applicants to be granted approvals and permitting. My duty as planner and zoning administrator is to report to you whether the policies and standards in those documents have been met, and they have. So staff requests your support for issuance of the zoning permit and the variance. So Madam Chair, with your approval, I will turn to Advisor Michael Bjornberg. He will speak on behalf of Advisor Lemon and Chevalier, although they are both present, I believe, and available for questions. Their advice to the board on changes such as this proposal is required, both by statute and as specified as necessary in the rules for zoning.
Go right ahead, Mr. Bjornberg.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, members of the board and staff. My name is Michael Bjornberg. I'm an architect and I'm an advisor to the staff.
I think we're good. Yep.
In that role as an advisor to this project, particularly because it involves demolition, I looked at context, history, and potential reuse. This is a photograph of the current building and then also its location, which is just north of the Capitol. Next slide. And I wanted to give a perspective on, this is the dashed white line is a current property owned by the proposer. The colored areas are the original Bethesda Hospital and the subsequent additions. The slide on the right shows the colored dash line around the impact on the property, and Peter's already spoken to what remains. This was a year 1929 rendering as Bethesda began fundraising. It was going to be a $625,000 investment up on Capitol Hill. Noted the lack of modern facilities making it impossible to project their location. You might say at that time than was built. This was also 1929, 1930, 1931, which was difficult economic times for the country. The original facility was located in downtown St. Paul. The plan was to vacate that one and build this facility. Through the course of that, Bethesda decided to maintain the downtown hospital for use and to build a new facility. Next one. So the slide on the left shows you why they needed a new modern facility. Pretty difficult to care for patients in a modern way in a facility like that. And then on the right is the facility that was built in 1931 and dedicated by Dr. William Mayo. So smaller than the rendering you saw before. And this building had subsequent additions as the needs for healthcare changed and the need to modernize. Next one. So Bethesda Hospital's use as a hospital ended in November 2020. At that time, it had a capacity of 355 beds. It included, you could call it reuse uses, step-up shelter, and COVID respite. That current lease use expired May 31st, 2022. The Bethesda facility is currently vacant. My experience with existing buildings, they are most vulnerable when they are vacant. It also means there are no additional eyes on the street for the community. Next slide. So looking at viability for reuse. Demolition of a large facility of this size is always difficult, particularly when there's a great need for facilities across the state and the country. So could it be reused? That was one of the first questions. Yes, it could be reused, possibly housing, offices, or retail. Bethesda's not in the business for any of those. They're in the healthcare business. So the long-term potential of the existing building for continued reuse as a new hospital is not a viable reuse. Next slide. So then looked at historic designations, and we talked with the SHPO office on this. First of all, it has to be determined to be eligible. That process has not begun. Any conclusion from the beginning of that process is probably a year out. The entire process of a nomination is at least 2 years out. Again, the building is vacant. In order for that building to be eligible, it must have significance, it must exhibit context and integrity. This building likely could be considered eligible. It has not been determined eligible. So once it has been determined eligible, then it can be nominated for historic designation, and then that is submitted, and then that must be considered and approved. But key to that too is the current property owner must express a desire to pursue historic designation, which would preclude the nomination process. In addition to that, the historic tax credits sunset as of June 30th, 2022. So the incentives for reusing historic buildings through historic tax credits no longer exist. And then the climate in St. Paul with rent control has also put a damper on reuse as housing. Next slide. So historic mitigation considerations. When a historic property is demolished, we often look at how can it be mitigated? How do we maintain the memory of what was there? There was a significant amount of history through their artwork, sculptures, medical artifacts, photos, and written materials. It has a very rich history of contributions to the healthcare industry and to our community. We looked at suggestions like retaining the existing cornerstone, retaining the house museum and making it available to the public, integrating artwork and sculpture into the new development and site, reuse of some decorative building elements, consideration of reuse of historic names, plaques, and tributes in the new facility, and then documentation of the building history and site using HAB's Level 2 documentation guidelines. And then looking again, back one. Sorry. That's all right. While it's difficult to see a complex that served the city and healthcare community and capital areas so well for 90 years be considered for demolition replacement, and we have considered demolition should only be considered if a replacement facility is of substantial benefit to the community and capital area. I do believe this facility is substantial benefit to the capital area and the community. Upon review of the proposal for a new facility and request for demolition of existing facility, CAP board staff and advisors recommend that any demolition permit be tied to a specific design concept and proposal being developed for continued similar hospital use. And then specifically, the new building should be constructed of long-lasting materials. The siding should respond to existing community patterns and be a capital area asset. The therapeutic garden should remain a neighborhood amenity and should be considered of development of a pedestrian experience along its edges. And I wanted to end with this slide. This is existing artwork in that therapeutic garden. It is a private space that is offered to the public for use by Bethesda. There is a rich experience of art in there. There are currently 3 empty pads that could be more artwork in there too, but I think it's probably an asset that that general larger community is not aware of. That's back up.
Okay, thank you, Michael. With your permission, next will be the presentation by the Fairview Acadia team.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm pleased to present again to you to have back with us Trudy Trisla of Fairview Health Services and Charles Hill of Stengel Hill Architecture. They will review their proposal and identify the team members present and available to answer your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Trudy Trisla. I'm Chief Administrative Officer at Fairview, and I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about our project. And I also learned some things about the State Fair that I didn't know I haven't participated in, which is great. As you know, we've been before this board about our desire to build a new 144-bed adult and geriatric mental health hospital at the Capitol Boulevard site. I'm proud to say that Fairview is the largest provider of mental health services in the state. Our commitment to this care and our patients is strong, and that is why it led us to a process of considering how we could continue to serve the mental health needs, particularly around inpatient mental health care for this community and for our broader state. It's through that journey that we began a process in 2019 to reflect on the best way to do that. And through that did a reflection and a process of partnership and study about what would best meet the needs of our patients. And through that process, we formed the relationship with Acadia Healthcare, a leading provider in mental health services. And the issue that's before us today is the request to build the new facility. The hospital will serve patients not only in the East Metro and from St. Paul, but also across the state, from inside and outside the Fairview system, and without regard to the patient's income or insurance status. Most importantly, this hospital and our partnership with Acadia is a transformational step toward meeting an urgent and longstanding need for inpatient psychiatric beds in Minnesota. As noted, we're here with respect to 2 land use approvals, one of them being a zoning permit, which was covered in a minor setback variance driven primarily by needs to effectively accommodate stormwater features and the potential for expansion as patient needs directed. Chip Hill is here as from an architectural perspective to describe the building. I will just say that the building design was really focused on patients' clinical needs in the future, with open sight lines, with a gym, with open meeting spaces, with the safety features that are really necessary and appropriate, particularly for this type of care. So I just wanted to thank the CAP board, all of you, as well as the staff for all their partnership and cooperation during this process. And for the community engagement in particular, it has made our project better. And certainly if there are questions, some of the materials that we submitted may answer them. We're obviously here to answer any questions that the board has. And we look forward to doing that and sharing more, answering any questions you have and any information you need. And hearing and appreciate your interest and support for this very important, we believe, project for our community. Yep.
Yes. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present. Just a quick level set on what is there now versus what will be there. The existing hospital was about 273,000 square feet, 10 stories high, 355 beds originally, and 90 years old. Our new facility will be 108,000 square feet, significantly smaller, 5 stories, and that 5 stories is really, it's 3 stories from the appearance on Capitol Boulevard, 5 stories on Park Street, just because of the following site, 144 beds, and obviously a brand new purpose-built behavioral hospital. A couple highlights on the site design. The main organizer for the site is a new roundabout at the northern end of Capitol Boulevard, just kind of respecting Cascade vision for what happens at the terminus of Capitol Boulevard to the north. It's aligned on the Capitol itself, and then to the east on the existing green space and gazebo, and then that also serves as the organizer for our new entry tower element for the hospital itself. The existing green space, as Peter mentioned, will remain as is. It was a common theme throughout all of the neighborhood meetings. The new hospital itself will include an area for future expansion to the north, kind of towards the intersection of Park and Coma. You can kind of see in yellow here. And we do have a couple exterior activity yards on the Park Street side of the facility for patient exterior recreation. And as Peter noted also previously, the existing parking garage as it is, and we're really not adding significant parking to the site, just a couple of handicap accessible spaces. Quick notes on the variance. The green dashed line here shows the footprint of the existing hospital, the blue, the new hospital. Neither complies with the setback distances, which are basically within 5 feet for the first 30 feet at the intersection of Como and Park, and then 25 feet max from there on out. But the benefits of not going all the way to the streets, especially on the Park Street side, it preserves the campus nature of the existing site, and it does allow for significant stormwater amenities along the Park Street side of the campus, which have been worked out with the Capital Region Watershed District. And we will actually, because of the smaller overall size of this development compared to what's there now, it will increase the amount of open space on the site. We did look at adaptive reuse, and there's a great amount of information on the Capital website about the adaptive reuse evaluation that's done. The existing hospital, as Michael pointed out, it was state of the art when it was built, but what these patients need now, as Trudy mentioned, is state of the art behavioral health care. We have significant issues with the existing hospital, low floor-to-floor heights, small structural grids, lack of showers in patient rooms, just things that won't work in a contemporary behavioral healthcare facility. We did look at using the 1931 building for other uses, administrative and non-patient care uses, but restricted by the amount of space left on the campus to build patient tower that's needed. And we also still have the floor-to-floor height issue to deal with compared to what we need to meet current code in the new facility. So the conclusion after that evaluation was that a purpose-built behavioral healthcare hospital, this population with all of the contemporary safety needs, is the right choice for this project. But as a commemoration to the existing facility and the mission of Bethesda Hospital on that campus, we are taking several steps. One, there's a very significant Paul Gramlin sculpture on site, which we will preserve in a feature location on the campus. Second, at the center of the roundabout at the top of Capitol Boulevard, there is space for a feature sculpture element, which will be determined. What that becomes will be determined with community engagement. So it will be initiated by Fairview and Acadia. And we do anticipate working with the demolition contractor to salvage feature elements from the building that will become part of the walkway along Park Street and Como Avenue as you come around the building as a commemoration once again to the existing. Landscape and stormwater features, just a couple notes here. You can see that the bench locations and pedestrian walkway along Park Street to the left, Como Avenue to the north, that are the opportunities for salvage building reuse. Stormwater feature on the Park Street side of the facility, once again, working with Capital Region Watershed District. Additionally, the CRWD conversations led to the identification of a couple areas for some additional potential grant-funded stormwater mitigation measures in both the area south of the existing parking garage and the existing surface parking lot. Continue to work with them on that. This shows the location of the Gramlin sculpture close to the main entrance at a pedestrian crossing area. And the main focus of the roundabout is that we're preserving the view down Capitol Boulevard from Como Avenue as a feature. Just mobility considerations we'll work through with Move Minnesota, and sustainability considerations we'll also work through with CAAPB Board. Just a couple highlights here. We're not proposing any new service parking beyond what's required to address accessibility and some short-term patient pickup. The existing parking garage will stay in service, and the existing service lot will stay as is. Sustainability, we will be designing a base level LEED certification, and actually we've done specific energy modeling that's detailed in the sustainability memo. Actually, our energy usage will be about 20% better than base level LEED certification based on that detailed energy model. Just one quick slide about scale. Looking at a 10-story existing hospital versus the 5-story new building, you can see in red the outline of the existing hospital will be a much lower, kind of more in line with what is surrounding the site in terms of the height of this new building, about half the height of the existing hospital. high quality materials. Michael mentioned that that's one of the criteria, that the vision that's presented here has to be worthy, if you will, of the site. And we are using stone, many nice materials on this facility, and be designed for a long life. A couple views rotating around the building here. The main point of this view from the northeast is that the new entrance of the hospital is on axis with the roundabout and with the gazebo and the green space across the street. Looking from the Park Street side of the campus and the corner of Como and Park Street, you can see that we end up with a very nice pedestrian walkway versus what right now, if you're on Park Street, it's the back end service side of the existing hospital. So that would be, as Peter has talked about this in the past, an activated pedestrian experience now. And then lastly, we're eliminating the many curb cuts along Park Street. We will just have one service yard entrance from Park Street that aligns with Charles Street across Park Street. And all the other curb cuts will go away once again to create that pedestrian experience around the site. And with that, I will leave you with a view from the green space back towards the new hospital. And see the axial relationship of the gazebo to the new facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there anything else from Mr. Bjornberg or Mr. Musty?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
So we members, do you have any questions at this point? Representative Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the applicant for your presentation, and to Mr. Musty for his overview and how it's been working with you folks. I was curious, given the critical need of mental health beds in the state of Minnesota, is your architectural design and your footing components accommodating should 10 or 15 years from now you want to go vertical and add floors?
We actually plan for lateral expansion to the north towards the corner of Park and Como for a 1 to 2 story expansion.
A comment, I would say that my experience with the Fairview system is nearly 50 years old. In my younger years, the intensive care and coronary care nurse, I completed some of my clinical studies within some of their facilities. And I'm excited to see this project moving forward. The success of a facility like this also heavily relies on recruitment of staff. I see this facility as being somewhat of a magnet to be able to recruit staff with a nice new facility, rather than the idea of coming to work in a depleted building that is long to replace. So I'm excited about your proposal. I'm encouraging everybody to embrace it, and anxious to see when you're going to open and you anticipate completion. Asset to this region, this area of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Representative Burgess. Any other questions from members?
I just had a quick comment and a question. I just wanted to let people know I'm planning to abstain from this vote simply because my day job is working for Health Partners, a competing healthcare organization. And, while Minnesota health systems collaborate quite a bit, we still are competitors at the end of the day, which I actually think is great for this city and our region. But for the purposes of this vote, I plan to abstain. But I did have just one quick question I was curious about. It sounds like there was good conversation with various community groups. As a former district council board member, I was just curious if any of them took any official position. I remember the previous temporary use for the building was understandably quite controversial, especially for that surrounding neighborhood. So I'm just curious. It sounded like there was good comment and support, but I'm just curious if there was official positions from any of the official entities, or was it just kind of conversations with neighborhood members there?
Peter, maybe you're in the best position to answer that. Certainly the dialogue from our perspective with the community was helpful in answering questions that they had. And I'm not aware of particular positions, but I really appreciate the question. I also want to thank you for your polling.
And we will hear from members of the public momentarily as well.
And
Yeah.
Madam Chair, those two individuals actually represent Block Club and the Homeowners Association on the park.
So we'll hear from those folks briefly or in a moment. Mr. Garrett, you can go right ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to briefly share my simultaneous excitement about the project as it's designed, and my simultaneous disappointment in not being able to find a creative way to preserve the Art Deco tower element. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Senator Pappas.
And Madam Chair, maybe after the public comments, I do have a statement that Mr. Garrett and I want to enter into the record.
Perfect. Okay, I will come back to that. Mr. Musty, I will hand it over to you to call on members of the public to go ahead and share their thoughts as well. And I believe each commenter may speak for up to 2 minutes. So Mr. Musty, you can go ahead and lead this section.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ability to comment was offered to community members via pre-registration by emailing or calling CAP board staff or by attending the in-person event today. We have with us the leader of the Capitol Heights Block Club, Hannah Hills. Hannah served on the advisor's design review group that we mentioned earlier. That was the group of about 15 of all of the property owners. I think we had almost all of them around the site. And Hannah has coordinated participation of 3 other Capitol Heights residents as part of that group. So Hannah is with us virtually today.
Hannah, you can, Ms. Hills, you can go right ahead.
And we
Thank you for having us. How are you today? I just wanted to first of all thank Mr. Bjornberg for his work in answering a lot of the historical questions that our residents have had. It was really helpful to see a lot of that laid out. As far as public sentiment from our end, as it's been said several times, it's a bit sad to see something of this historical significance go. I was unaware when we bought our home in the neighborhood that one of my great uncles had actually been treated at Bethesda during the very first years it was open after being run over by a Model T. So when he told me that, I was like, wow, that's quite a while ago. So we are really also grateful that the Fairview Acadia team has taken into consideration development along Park Street. That's not a very pedestrian-friendly area at this time. And seeing the renderings, we're hopeful that more life will be brought to that part of our neighborhood. And we are also grateful for the conversations we've been able to have around the green space. That's a huge part of our neighborhood, being able to gather in that area, people walking dogs there, people gathering for lunch there, being able to continue to use that is incredibly important. And so I guess with all that, we're excited about the opportunity that it provides for better mental health care in our state and to be able to hopefully see that quality of life improve for people. I don't know if there was anything else that I needed to comment on, but we support the variance.
Thank you, Ms. Hills, and we look forward to having you join this board formally when the City Council takes action on that. Mr. Musty, is there additional public comment?
Yes, thank you, Board Chair. We also have with us today the president of the Capitol Heights City Homeowners Association, Chris Anning. Chris is a state employee living in a townhome directly on Cedar, facing the hospital green. Chris, you can.
Thank you, Merritt.
Thank you. Just come right up here and have a seat next to me. Yes.
Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for having me. My name is Chris Daniel. I live at 798 Cedar, and we're in a townhomes that was developed with under the view of the CAAPB board. And so I am here to testify as to the engagement, public engagement with the community that Acadia has presented, and give you our reaction to that. So Bethesda, we have had through the corporate owners, the various corporate owners of Bethesda Hospital, we have had a very strong and positive and healthy relationship with the neighborhood. And so we are excited that Acadia is coming in with a new building. We think it's going to beautify the block and the neighborhood and bring new families of patients and staff and patients into the neighborhood to walk and enjoy the green space, which we love as well. The statues are all different and quirky, just like us. So we are really happy. And the Acadia has done a great job with answering all of our questions. Peter has developed an incredible packet, and they mailed packets to the neighborhood, and they also had in-person meetings as well as many online, and mailing and in-person were very useful because not all our residents are connected to the internet. So people were happy to get that beautiful color packet in the mail. Some of them had never even heard about it, so it was important. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you so much for your time, for your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'd just like to a personal thank you to both of them. Who they were also part of, as you remember, the important use before this of the shelter and respite that Fairview's hosted. They were a very big part of the Good Neighbor group that we convened every month to discuss issues. So I just wanted a special thank you to both of those two.
Thank you. If there is no one else who wishes to speak from the public and the community on this public hearing portion of the meeting is closed. I will now move us on, and Senator Pappas, I know that you would like to speak here in just a moment. A draft resolution is on the slide here for our consideration, matching what was included in your packets. Mr. Musty, can you please give us just a short overview of the resolution?
Certainly, it is a combined resolution. The first of two slides, I will paraphrase that relates to a recommendation to zoning administrator to issue a zoning permit for the demolition and the construction of a new hospital. It is required that any large change alteration to capital area building be reviewed against the rules. Staff does support approval. The second I will move to is approval of the variance, which is a required approval in our code of the variance that is before you that has been published.
Thank you. Members, is there any discussion of the resolution before we consider a motion? Or Senator Pappas and Mr. Garrett, if you would like to chime in now.
Yes, Madam Chair, in fact, I wanted to speak before we actually saw the resolution. So just some comments. I do appreciate that the architects, Mr. Hill, and that Bethesda and Arcadia did consider the reuse of the iconic tower. Again, I echo Mr. Garrett's feelings that we're disappointed and hope that you will be able to find some adaptive use, as was mentioned, along different pathways so that there's some remembrance of the history of your building. So here's our comment. For decades, Bethesda Hospital has served as a beacon of hope and healing in the community. When COVID hit our state in March 2020, Bethesda rose to the challenge, becoming Minnesota's first medical facility to specifically treat patients infected with coronavirus. Now Bethesda is addressing a new need, mental health. This development is tremendous news for St. Paul, However, current plans involve the complete demolition of the existing facility, including the iconic Bethesda Tower facade, a small but historically significant piece of St. Paul history and an irreplaceable example of local Art Deco architecture. Art Deco is quintessentially American type of architecture that features handcrafted health facility while preserving the Art Deco tower facade for future generations. We urge the developers to honor the past, prepare for the future, and ensure it remains a beacon for our community for years to come. We look forward to any updates that will be made to the hospital that will allow it to continue to serve all of those who need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. Garrett, for your statement. Any other additional questions or reflections from members? Okay. Well, with that, I wanted to thank Mr. Musty and Advisor Bjornberg and Advisor Chevalier for the careful work in reviewing these materials. And I think we absolutely can lament the loss of this old hospital building and Art Deco and the real history that is connected to this site. And I certainly have brought my mom to many doctor's appointments at this facility as well. So we can do this while also agreeing that Acadia and Fairview proposed something that fits within our rules and previously adopted plans. Our purview we've got some guardrails here. So with that, I will ask for a motion to approve this resolution.
So,
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And with that, I will take the roll. Ms. Badrow.
Aye.
Dr. Bean has dropped off in Iowa, is my understanding, as he's traveling with her family. Ms. Belton is. That's right. Representative Freiberg.
Aye.
Mr. Garrett.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Representative Furtas.
aye.
Mr. McLean.
Abstain.
Abstain. Senator Nelson. Senator Nelson. It looks like we have lost Senator Nelson. Senator Pappas.
Yes.
Mr. Yang.
Aye.
And I vote aye. 6 ayes and 1 nay. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. So we now we have a meeting chock full of content, everyone, and not a whole lot of time. So we will be short and sweet. We now have 2 updates on memorials in our state capitol building and on the grounds. First, we will hear an update from Executive Secretary on the Nellie Stone Johnson statue. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. The Nellie Johnson statue will be joining other dignitaries at the Minnesota Capitol building in the coming months. We do not have a specific date yet for arrival or for the unveiling, but she is almost near completion. A bronze name plaque is being added to the bottom. We're working with the Historical Society on a biographical wall panel that will be installed next to her. The enclosure ready to receive her and keep her a secret until the ceremony is in place. So, and the event planning is beginning soon. So we're really excited for this to be nearing completion. And that's going to be just terrific to have her added to the plaque.
Excellent. Thank you very much. There are also several upcoming events. Go ahead.
So I just had a quick question. Where is it actually being made, and how's it transported? Like via truck, or do you happen to know? Just curious.
I don't know the transport. Wade Wozlowski from Department of Administration is online, and I know we're kind of tight on schedule, but I can find that out.
Sure.
Excellent. There are also several events upcoming related to the recently completed Medal of Honor Memorial on the Capitol Mall. I'm pleased to welcome back past Executive Secretary and current member of the Minnesota Medal of Honor Memorial Committee, Paul Mandel, who has an update for us on events. Mr. Mandel, welcome back.
Thank you.
Can't stay away.
Paul Mandel, 8320 Cletus Avenue in Monroe. And as you noted, a board member, the newest board member on the Medal of Honor Memorial Committee. Just recognizing your shortness of time, the memorial is in final throes of construction. The water is working and running, and it looks beautiful. It's what they call it. I don't think it's a zero gravity, but it's just constant recirculating, not a pool anymore. And it's polished granite on the base. So when it's not working in the winter months, it will look just like it does now. But you're more than welcome to go down and view it. There's still some fencing around. They're doing some planting this next week. The memorial dedication will be Thursday, September 22nd, from 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. There'll be 2 days of celebration ceremonies with at least 5 recipients of the Medal of Honor coming in from out of town, including Tom Kelly, who's one of the board members from Boston, and I love his accent, so I'll be welcoming him back. And there will be luncheons and dinners, and there's going to be a paddle boat experience dinner that's open to the public. I don't know if there's tickets left, but that will be on the 22nd at 6 o'clock out of Stillwater. But John Kramer, who initiated this process more than a decade ago, has been instrumental throughout the entire project. Department of Administration, CAAPB board, everyone has been very, very cooperative. It is going to be a beautiful day, a beautiful event. It's a beautiful. If you're looking at the pictures, it looks the water feature looks just like that. It's highly reflective, and it is functioning beautifully. I went down there this morning about 7 o'clock, and it's working great. So we look forward to seeing people there, and a final culmination. Hats off to John Kramer, the person who makes excellent bread. He's in his 80s, and he has been at this thing for over a decade, and it's well deserved accolades for him.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that update. I'm excited for the ceremony. It's on my birthday. I'm sure that's why you planned it that way. Bringing a memorial concept to fruition is a tremendous undertaking. And as someone who served on State Gov Finance, this has been a long process. And so we are very excited for it and to have a water feature that works. So that's very exciting. And also, have been talking to some of the folks who have been connected to the Nellie Stone Johnson Memorial as well. I can't wait. That's going to be such a wonderful addition to our Capitol. Very exciting. So I know that members, we have in our packet some additional updates from Mr. Musty. I wanted to see if anyone had any questions on any of those updates. If not, he will be available to you as well as the Executive Secretary, and I am going to table the approval of the minutes so that we can get out of here on time. I really appreciate unless you're ready to roll. Are you ready to roll?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Okay.
I move approval of the minutes, April 5th, 2022.
Perfect. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mr. McLean.
I just heard.
All right, we can do it. Okay. Motion seconded. We'll now proceed with a roll call vote in alphabetical order on the motion. Ms. Badrow.
Aye.
Representative Freiberg. Representative Freiberg. Mr. Garrett.
Aye.
Representative Hertags. Aye. Mr. McLean.
Aye.
Senator Nelson. Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Mr. Yang.
Aye.
And as chair, I vote aye as well. Yep, motion is approved and the meeting minutes are confirmed. So members, this brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. I really appreciate it. We had a robust conversation, a lot of content. And, you know, this is one of the spaces where many of us from different experiences, walks of life, roles in government come together, and I appreciate it. The hybrid meeting, we made it work with a little technical difficulties, but was successful. So please be in contact with the executive secretary if you have a preference on this meeting format, if this hybrid is working for you. Take good care, enjoy the rest of the summer. I hope you have an incredible time at the state fair, and I look forward to a detailed report out on all of the foods that you consume in the next 12 days. So with that, we are adjourned.
Next time.
Thank you. The next 10 minutes. That's right. Thank you, everyone, so much. Good to see you virtually.
On that very first vote we took on the commemorative